Hello and welcome. I'm super excited you're here. I've been wanting to create with some of the products I'm showcasing today from the Greetery, and since I got them in the fall, I literally haven't had time to use them. The biggest purpose I have for the video is not only to feature some beautiful products, but also to show that just by changing the color, products can be used for different occasions and seasons, just like I did for the Valentine cards I created. The other reason is that I love color. It is so impactful, and so I thought it would be fun to create a series where every once in a while my video would be part of this Color Matters series. So let's get started making some cards. The first set I'm going to use is the BotaniCuts Sunflower Die set, and it has two different sized flowers in it. The second set is the Market Basket set, and it also has a coordinating stamp set for the label on the front. This is the Toadstool die set. I don't end up using this, but you totally could. I'll use the Shiplap Builder die set, and then this is the Fall Foliage hot foil plate and die set, and I'll use that on my second card. Now I got a few great sentiment sets, but I was really excited to use the Written in Ribbon set with its coordinating dies. And it has two different steps, and I'm going to show how to use a few inks with this. Since the Sunflower die set has a few layers, I thought the Altenew Red Cosmos Gradient cardstock set was perfect, since it has 4 different colors in it. I'll mix and match a couple of the colors so the flowers aren't the same and run that through my die cut machine. And the center of the flower there has got little tiny little pieces in it. You can save those and pop those back in. I thought I'd save it and try it, and then I end up using something different. I'm using a sticky mat to start with the base layer of the flower, and I'll add some shading onto that with the Worn Lipstick Distress Oxide. And I've also got some finger blenders that I've labeled for each color of the oxides. So I'll just start by adding a little bit of color to the edges of the flowers with that Worn Lipstick. And I'll do that on both of the base layers of the flower. I also add a little bit of ink to the centers of the flower to give them a little bit of depth in the middle. Now with the second layer of the flowers, I decided to try Candied Apple on that darker pink, and I didn't like it. So I end up going back to Worn Lipstick and doing that, using that color on both of the those layers. And you can see just by adding that Worn Lipstick onto the Candied Apple, it changes the color of that and softens it up a lot. I love how the properties of the Distress Oxide inks allow you to do that. I'll continue adding color to the third layer, and the lighter pink there, I'm going to use Festive Berries on the edges of that one. And then I'll switch to Tattered Rose, and I'm going to add some highlight to the red one there. I also love these inks because you can use the lighter colors on a darker cardstock. And then I'll switch back to Festive Berries and just dab a little bit on the centers. And now I can wipe off my sticky mat with the baby wipe, and then I'll dry it off with a microfiber towel. It'll keep its stickiness, and I can move on to my next color. I took all the layers of the sunflower and added some shape to them by using a bone folder, almost like how you would curl a ribbon on a present, and that just gives them lots of dimension. I love how that makes the flower stand out more and gives them a more lifelike look. I'll add some foam tape in between a few of the layers, and that's going to even make them pop more. There's a die that cuts out the ring that goes around the center, and I'll glue that on. But that same die also cuts a circle piece in the center of that most people are going to throw away. And I'm going to use that on the back of the centers to add a little darker color instead of popping in those little pieces. And then I'll pop each one of those centers up with foam tape and give them even more dimension. I'm absolutely loving the sunflowers in this color, and you can see just by changing that how different they look. They look like a Goodberry daisy to me now, which is another one of my favorite flowers. I'll add some shade to the leaves with Pine Needles ink, and I'll do that the same way that I did with the flowers, and just add a little bit of darkness around the edge. I cut these, there's 2 leaves in that set, and I cut them twice each. And then I'm just going to add the vein to the top in a darker color. I used the market basket set to put the flowers into on the card, and I'll cut that out of silver mirror cardstock, and I'll also use that sentiment set with it. The set has a solid die that you can make a liner out of, and I'll use that and I'll use the Teardrops layering stamp set from Altenew to make a pattern on my cardstock. I'll use the ruby red ink, which coordinates with one of my cardstocks I used on the flowers. And I'll just keep moving that up. So I have taken my cardstock and I've made a little tick with my pencil every half an inch. And so I'm going to move this up 1 inch each time I stamp until I have that panel all stamped, and then I'll move the cardstock so that it's in between the half-inch mark, and I'll also clean my stamp and move it so the pattern is in between the other one. And I'll again move it 1 inch and stamp until the pattern is complete. I thought this was a really pretty delicate print and it showed really nicely through the basket. I cut that out with a solid die, and then I cut out two for the top of the liner out of ruby red cardstock and stacked those together. And then I can glue all the pieces together to finish off the basket. When I first saw this, I thought of so many different scenes I could use this basket in, and I just thought it was so versatile. There's also those little handles you want to glue on the top. I cut the label out of silver mirror cardstock and then stamped the sentiment with obsidian black ink. I'll cut 2 panels of the Shiplap builder die for the background, and I'll ink around the edges with pumice stone ink to make the pattern that the die leaves pop out a bit more. When I have those all inked, I'll create the background by first adding a tape runner adhesive onto an A2 size card panel. Then I can easily start adding the dies. I add the first one starting off the edge a little bit, and then when I get to the last piece on the row, I cut off the excess and then use that piece to start the next row, and I continue all the way up that way. If you've ever laid wood flooring down, it's usually a good pattern to follow. So your ends are staggered and they're not lined up. You want them to be kind of off a little bit. Just ask me how I know. So here's the finished card all put together, and I added some little hearts from a My Favorite Things set that I had in my stash, and I thought they mimicked falling petals. I thought they were really cute. I wanted to show a little comparison to the sunflowers and the shiplap dies for a card that I had started but haven't finished. But just look how different the color changes these for a different look and for a different season. I think someone would be pretty happy to get that in the mail for Valentine's Day. My next card is fairly simple, but I think the color and the fun techniques make it really special. This would also be a great card to make multiples of to send out, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be a Valentine. So let me show you the techniques I used to make this. I'll start by using the Written in Ribbons set, and I showed that at the beginning of the video. I'll use the Just For You sentiment, and I'll start by using the die. I thought it was easier to line up the stamp by cutting the die first, and so I placed the negative piece in my MISTI as a template and then fit the stamp into that before I placed the die cut back into it. I'll stamp it with Tattered Rose ink first, and then I'll clean off the stamp and then use worn lipstick ink with a finger blender and just dab the ink onto the stamp, mostly on the ends and the bottom of the word, so I can get more of an ombre effect that looks like ribbon. You could totally stop here, but this has a second step stamp, and I'm going to use that to give it 3 colors. I'm lining up the second stamp with what I've already inked, and then I'll stamp this layer with Festive Berries. This layer really adds to the ribbon look of the word, and hence the name of the set. I love the words in this set. It's one you can use time and time again, and also it's perfect to use with color, and that's a big reason why I chose it. I'm using the Crimped Slimline die set, and I cut all 3 pieces from Concord and Knight's Ballet Slippers cardstock, and my base is 8.5 by 3.5, and I put all the layers together with foam tape to give them a lot of dimension. I was super excited to use the new Greetery hot foil plates, and this is the fall foliage with its matching dies. I foiled these with Spellbinder's opal foil on heat-resistant acetate and then cut them out with the dies. I also cut out the clusters from honeysuckle cardstock, which is also from concordonite. I love how you see that opalescent detail with the foil and the acetate, and they don't look like fall at all. I put a little glue on the very end of the stem so you don't see any adhesive either. I didn't show the hot foil process, but I'll link to a video here where I go into a lot of depth on that. I decided to stack 3 more die cuts from ballet slippers cardstock onto the sentiment, and I offset it a little bit so they peek out a bit from the side. I finished the card by stamping the second sentiment from the Written in Ribbon set with concordonite honeysuckle ink that matches the cardstock. I also added a few pearls here and there. I hope you enjoyed my first video for my Color Matters series and that I give you some good ideas that you'll try out. As always, the products I used are listed in the description below. I also have a couple other videos at the end here that you might check out. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. I always appreciate it. I hope you have a great day doing something you love. And remember, color matters.